Jamie and I are finally back on a video together. And this is not an official getting gritty with it, but let's just call it a half-C episode. We wanted to talk about, Chuck Fletcher's kind of press conference today. We wanted to talk about what's happened. We have more content coming out. And don't worry, content will not be stopping because the season ends. We will be going all summer long. But Jamie, we got a lot to talk about. We got a lot of quotes today, a lot of conversations. And right before this, you were telling me you weren't that happy with a lot of these answers. I want to hear what you have to say. What do you think, man?
Chuck Fletcher hit on a lot of notes that, I think we all knew that he would do for this, his plan, per se, for this, off season. Fixing the bottom six, which, the third line center role became, it reared its ugly head again. Minus a Nolan Patrick, they thought Derek Grant would be that guy. It didn't really start to stabilize until Scott Laughton, came back down to, the 3C role, which I don't think the Flyers want him in that, particular role. I think they'd much rather have him on the wing, whether it be in the top six or, on the third line itself or even on the fourth line as a winger. I believe that, the Flyers would rather have him on the wing, and it's quite evident of that. AV was very reluctant to move Scott Laughton back to that 3C role, and it wasn't until the latter parts of the New York Islanders series that Scott Laughton did come back into that 3C role. That's all fine. He wants to call out the bottom six for not scoring, to which they really didn't, which is quite obvious. I mean, Pitlick had a goal in the top six. One of his, I think he ended up with 2 goals. He had 1 goal, I think, when he was a member of the second line. Raffle had 2 goals as a member of the top line, when he played up there. So he really only had, Fletcher was correct, he really only had 1 goal in the bottom 6 role. Other than that, Nate Thompson scored a goal in the bottom 6. The bottom 6 was definitely a problem, but Chuck Fletcher realizes that the top 6 was too. He did call out the top 6 today and said they did not produce. So he did mention the top 6. It's just the Flyers don't have the cap space to pull off for a top 6 move. So what is he going to do? He's going to call out the bottom 6 and shore up the bottom 6. But there was another issue that Chuck Fletcher went on to say. He brought up defensive depth, and he said that he wanted to shore up the, defensive depth, in the years coming forward, for the Flyers. And that is the part that left me scratching my head. The Flyers have more than enough defensemen within their system. The Flyers are loaded to the gills right now with defensemen. So what does that mean? To me, that means that Ghost is out. If he's talking about shoring up defensive depth minus Braun, because I feel that it's evident that with him saying that, Justin Braun will be gone during this offseason, that he will not be resigned. You try to trade Shane Gostisbehere, you are still left with Mark Friedman, Samuel Morin, and, you could have Walensky, Prosser. You could also have, you have a younger defenseman.
Yeah, but those guys.
You have Jaeger Zamula. You have Wyatt Wiley. They have defensemen in this system to withstand until Cam York eventually comes up.
Yeah, but that doesn't last, Jamie. Because those veterans aren't good enough, though. Walensky and Prosser are not good enough to be veterans here.
More than capable of playing in the top 6 role.
Friedman, sure.
And if he isn't, then the Flyers should move on from him. It is not fair to keep him here. I just do not understand why they would have to focus on defense. If you're doing that, then Samuel Morin is gone. Okay? Right?
I don't agree. I don't agree with the statement, though, Jamie. I don't agree with it overall because I think we lack the veteran presence around these guys. Like, I think Niskanen is good enough. I don't think Braun is good enough to keep around Sanheim and Myers and Provorov. He's going to be left in the dust, Like, we need another veteran guy who can really play, like Niskanen. And I think that's what they're talking about because I think what they're going to do with Friedman is rotate him in as the number 7, right? Because he'll probably get, 13 to 25 games this year in the NHL if he is rotated in as a number 7. And 25 games is enough to get a good size of him and see, is he here long term? I think that's kind of what they're doing with Friedman, but I don't think he necessarily took that spot. I don't know. I guess we saw what happened in the playoffs this year, and I mean, our young players got rocked, on D, and a lot of people did. It's not picking on the defenseman, but I mean, Sanheim had his moments, even though I thought he did great, but he had his moments, right? Myers had his moments. It's like they're still learning, and I feel like maybe that's what he's referring to. And I don't think
Prosser Myers played well, with the exception for the New York Islanders series. I don't think anybody played any well.
Well, exactly. Nobody was 100%, right?
Exception for Provy, and I'll give Niski there. However, it is time to take the gloves off these prospects. It is time to take the gloves off and see what you have. I'm not a fan of just continuing to play the veterans. I'm just not. I'm ready to take the gloves off and see what happens. It's time for the Flyers to take the next step, and the next step is to get rid of dead weight. And, dead weight, in my opinion, was, Justin Braun's. Okay, move on from him. Fine. Okay, you want to trade, Shane Gothisbehere, which I thought he would be traded anyway. Okay, fine. It leaves Mark Friedman. Mark Friedman is more than capable of filling that top 6. You also have, again, you would have Jaeger Zamula. You would have, Nate Prosser. You could also have, Andy Welinski in case something goes south. Plus, you have Samuel Morin sitting there.
Yeah, but we know why though. Morin's had off for 2 years, right? So there's a risk, right? You got a risk with Morin. You're missing Friedman. I would actually agree with you. I do think he's ready for the NHL as well. But I think they're looking for, again, a veteran guy because Provorov, Sanheim, and Myers are all young, and Niskanen is the only veteran who can eat. Well, and Haig too, but he can't eat a ton of minutes. You know what I mean? I mean, like, what happens if Niskanen gets injured? Is Justin Braun's not going to be able to play Niskanen's role? So that's why, in my mind, I'm like, maybe they're looking for a guy like Anton Strawman. Like a guy like that who can move the puck. Maybe he's in his mid-30s, something like that. He can play a bottom-pairing defenseman. Maybe he used to be a top 4, top-pairing guy, and he's at the end of his career. It's like maybe that's the kind of guy they're looking for, and that's what they mean. Because Nate Prosser and Welinski, odds are they're not going to play in the NHL for the Flyers, right? Maybe Welinski, probably not Prosser. Like they're going to be there with the Phantoms. And Zamula, they're probably going to want him to play in the AHL, right? And even York, they'll probably want him to start in the AHL too, even though I think he'll probably skip it. But, they're going to want to ease these guys in there. So I understand why they want the depth, The question is, though, Jamie, is it depth for depth's sake, which is annoying, right? Like, do you bring in another guy like Welinski? That's not going to help you very much. You already have Welinski. You don't need, like, the key is are they really going to do what I'm saying and bring in a guy who's better, not just a guy who's another Justin Braun, to your point, right? What's the point of another Justin Braun and now trying Friedman, right? I think we want somebody better than Braun if they're going to go out and get somebody.
My fear is that Friedman is going to be blocked. And, that is my fear. Now, I do trust Fletcher to make, the right decisions, as I think
that's a real fear.
The right decisions, but my fear, honestly, is that Mark Friedman is blocked next season, and they have another logjam at defense with Mark Friedman and Samuel Morin. Samuel Morin can't sit around; he's going to have to play as well. Mark Friedman's going to have to get time. You're talking about having 8 defensemen because if they waive, Samuel Morin, he's going to get claimed. If you waive Mark Friedman, he's going to get claimed. So these guys, aren't AHL, exempt anymore. So those are my fears.
This is a good point.
But I will tell you, I think that Chuck Fletcher hit the nail on the head in terms of having a flat cap. He realizes that there is a flat cap. Obviously, he's a good GM, so of course he already knew that. But he's already thinking ahead in terms of not making big splashes in terms of free agency for the next few seasons because they have X amount of players to resign. He referred to. He said, in-house cleaning is going to take up some of the cap, so it's not going to free them, pretty much in a nutshell, it's not going to free them the capabilities of going out and getting a big name, making a big splash via free agency. But he did mention that he can do such via trade. So with this flat cap, it's funny because the first person that came to my mind was Ghost and the two players that came to my mind were Ghost and JVR. Players just don't fit with AV system, I guess. They're on the outside looking in from our perspective. I would presume. And the thing is that you're not going to get rid of salary. So what I mean is that if you find a taker for JVR, you're going to get a player with $7 million cap hit back.
Yeah, probably.
So and you may have to give a sweetener.
There were less of a cap hit, but worse player, right?
There were 3 players I had this narrowed down to. I did a lot of research earlier, and it's coming out in my article tomorrow. But I'll give one name: William Nylander. Back to the Leafs, believe it or not. William Nylander, appears to be on the outs. In my eyes, in Toronto. Now, am I an insider to Toronto? No, but it's worth dangling that name to. Nylander is hooked up for X amount. I have to go check my notes again, but X amount of years for 6.5. So that's sort of comparable number. What you would have to do is you'd have to give a sweetener to Toronto.
Nylander, yeah. To take JVR.
Not JVR, straight up for Nylander. Don't think I'm crazy.
No. I mean, it would have to be Ghost if it would be.
Going to have to give a top end prospect for William Nylander for them taking JVR. So I'm thinking you'd probably have to give up possibly Morgan Frost or maybe.
Honestly, I can't see him doing it, man. I can't see it because his cap hits 3 years.
Right. Plus picks.
Yeah, it would be too much, man. It's for that team. They're not in a position to do that, though.
Well, where I'm getting at, this is you make my point. That's my point.
Well, there are teams that are in a position, though.
It's highly unlikely JVR gets moved because of.
Well, hold on. Let me make the case that I'm trying to make, though. Right? Like, okay, a team like Toronto, they're not in a position. One, they wouldn't because they let JVR walk to begin with, right? But they're not in a position to take on JVR because, one, they don't care about money. They care about cap space, right? And they're already, with a better player in Nylander, in a position where they have to win now. So they're not really trying to take a step back for prospects. That I don't think that's going to interest them very much. There are other teams, though, and I believe JVR's cap hit is going to be a little bit higher than his actual dollar value next year, potentially, or at least the last 2 years of his contract. So maybe a team that's out of the playoffs, or maybe they're more of a bubble team, or a team like Montreal will agree to take on a larger cap hit, right, at a lower dollar value, give us a worse player, But then again, remember what happened with Hartnell and Umberger. That didn't work out well for us. Yeah, we lost 3 years of Hartnell's contract, but the whole time everybody's like, we would have been better off just keeping Hartnell. You know what I mean? It's like that's what I worry about is unless we can actually replace JVR with a better player, getting rid of him is not just the win, right?
That's my point. It's highly unlikely JVR gets moved. You know what I mean? So
I would agree.
All the fans keep saying throw JVR. Yeah, that's great. And he has a high cap hit. But let's be realistic. If you're a GM, you're going to have to give me multiple sweeteners to take JVR. I don't care what team I'm going to. You know what I mean? And that's what I mean. Are you willing to part ways with a Cam York, a Morgan Frost, or a Bobby Brink? No. Because you may have to part with at least one of them, high-end prospects, in order for a team to take JVR. You know what I mean? I'm just saying.
There's almost no chance to do that.
I understand that. Yeah. I understand. That's what I'm saying. That's why it's highly unlikely that this transpires. I'm not saying
unless you were saying that there's an equal contract. Like if another team has a defenseman that's making $7 million a year, right? And the Flyers want to add a veteran defenseman, and maybe he's slightly overpaid, and the Flyers are like, yeah, well, we'd rather have this defenseman at $7 million a year for the next 3 years than JVR at $7 million a year. That's where I see the.
My argument.
Yeah, but to keep it, but that's where I'm like, now that defenseman could be a worse value than JVR. Like it could be a guy who's 33, 34, or whatever, has 3 years left and makes $7 million a year, and he's not as good. Like Like what happened to Jack Johnson towards the end of his career? Like it could be a player like that where he's just not that good, but he's a decent veteran. Or another guy like Braun, like it's JVR for Braun. You're losing the talent, right? But you're gaining the veteran defenseman that you need. So I think it's possible, but it's not necessarily going to make us a better team, to your point. But you could allocate that money towards D, right? Move out Ghost and use Ghost money for a forward.
There you go. Now we're talking, because you could trade Ghost for a forward that you are locked. So there's a package deal. You're going to get a forward that's, maybe like Max Domi, for instance, or something of that, somewhere around that nature, or something, that could fill the Flyers' need at 3C, that could fill physicality purposes. I'm just throwing a name out there and not saying it's going to happen, but Montreal has been linked to Ghost for at least a year, and they've also been linked to Claude Giroux for periods of time. I haven't heard much on his name, but I'm just throwing these players out there because those are the two.
I don't think we're ever trading Claude Giroux.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that Montreal's been linked to a number of our players. So, and they have a good trade history. They do have a good trade history with one another. Montreal and the Flyers. So there is influence there. To still continue that, but. It's going to be an interesting off season. Those were some things that really, 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 stuck out to me. And I think Chuck Fletcher, put on a pretty good show. It's interesting to see that there's no surgeries, needed for, any of our, players yet.
Surgeries, yeah, that I believe, but injuries, I have a hard. Oh, there was only 2 injuries, right, that were named. That I don't believe.
3.
Oh, there was 3. Okay.
Yeah, so he mentioned Michael Raffle with a high ankle sprain.
Sure.
He mentioned NAK got hurt blocking that shot. He said, but it was fortunate. It was nothing more than a bruise, but he said it was swollen like heck. Yeah. And he darn it, who was the other? There was a third.
I forget already too.
I forget, but there are 3. There are 3 players.
Listen, I've been watching hockey for a long time. I have never seen the Flyers team go almost 3 rounds and come back with 3 injuries. Like there's almost no chance because the other teams are banged up.
I believe all in all, I believe TK's hiding an injury or faking an injury.
Yeah.
I think he was hurt.
I think he's hurt too.
In my opinion, I just don't see how he wasn't. But Sean Couturier sprained MCL. That was the third. Another tidbit that I'm taking away is Brian Elliott. He did mention Brian Elliott, and he has all intentions of trying to at least have a conversation with re-signing Brian Elliott. So that was pretty reassuring on Chuck Fletcher's behalf, to hear that. Brian Elliott was a fantastic mentor, in my opinion, for Carter Hart. He is a guy that could sit and then play a spot game like 8 days later and come out and play very well like he was playing, the previous day or 2 days ago. So he's still fresh. The question is, does Brian Elliott want to return? I did hear a rumor that he was thinking of retirement.
Oh, I didn't hear that. Interesting.
Again, it's a rumor. It's nothing, to write home about, or whatever. But it was a rumor that I did hear that there was some lingering that he was thinking of going out on a high, and that he didn't want. There was some talk saying that he didn't want his season to end during, a pandemic. Like before they reinstituted, in the bubble. He didn't want him to go out like that. He wanted to go out, with a bang.
With playing.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see, what happens there in terms of Brian.
I didn't consider him retiring, actually. That would be interesting.
I don't know. I think he loves Philadelphia, and I think
he's got 1 year left in him, and I think the Flyers want to re-sign him for 1 year. I think he would sign cheap, and he's comfortable. He's got a kid, make a little bit of money.
Yeah. I think a lot of the Flyers are pissed off at the way this season ended, and I think that's why they all left in the way they did.
They're better. They're better than they played.
Yeah, and I think they know that, and to a top six. Like they received absolutely no goals from Travis Connecty. If somebody would have told me that before the playoffs began, I would have called him a crackhead.
Yes.
You know,
I'd be like, not one? I'd be like, there's no way he's going the whole tournament without a goal. I said,
it is mind-boggling that Travis Connecty there finished with a no goal. So,
but he also didn't look the same. Like, especially at what I believe after he took that shot off his foot. But he just did not look the same. The speed, where was the speed up the wing? At the very least, that wasn't there. He got pushed off the puck easier than I've ever seen him. His shooting wasn't there. His passing was there at times, but not. It looked like a completely different player. That's why I'm like, I saw the injury reports. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, if you guys say so. Yep. I was like, whatever. I was like, you guys didn't tell us about it.
Yeah, he was.
They don't need to tell us. I don't care. But
yeah, he was definitely hurt, and I personally believe there's no way he wasn't. There was no way he wasn't. But it is what it is.
More than just him were injured too.
Joel Farabee wasn't mentioned today either. So
there you go.
Because he had a concussion. I believe he had. I think. I mean, at the very least, I'm not 100% certain he had a concussion because it was never definitive.
Well, he took a shot to the head, right? So we all just suspect.
That's what I mean. It was either that or suspected of a concussion, I should say.
Could be a neck injury, I guess, but realistically, it probably was his head, right?
Let's say upper body.
Yeah. We'll use the NHL lingo.
He had an upper body injury for sure. There's no doubt, but he wasn't mentioned today either. See, Chuck Fletcher did a good job at his presser today, but there were some loose ends that he didn't touch on. For instance, like going in depth of injuries, and that's because he said that he had no contact with the player. It was like they all just for real. It was like they disappeared, and they disappeared because they were pissed off. I guarantee that they were pissed off from how that ended, how that Game 7 in particular. Good. If they would have went out with a bang, I lose 2-1. No, they got shellacked.
No, they played terrible. They played absolutely terrible.
Embarrassed in Game 7.
They couldn't even generate shots. It's the worst.
That's what I mean. And
I know.
These are some good things to take away. These are some good things. You don't want them to be happy about it. You don't want them to be like, oh, yeah, well, I'm hurt. I'm having a surgery. No, they're making no excuses. I see this as a good thing. I see this as a good thing Chuck hasn't talked to the players. You know what I mean? And, I think it's a good thing because what would this have done? It would have been like, oh, okay, excuse. Oh, well, I'm hurt. TK, well, I got a busted foot. Excuse. You know what I mean? So this puts to bed all of it, and now the team can move forward as one.
Yeah, and I think I honestly think that I made a video about this too, but I just think that overall the season was a success. Like, we can nitpick, but I think they're all disappointed. They're a better team than they played. Let's be honest. They're a better team, and that's why people are searching for answers. Like I heard trading TK, like literally people will search for anything right now to be like, oh, the Flyers, it's because of these 5 players the team didn't win. And it's like this addition by subtraction theory, which I always despise. It's just like, at this point, I'm just like, everybody just needs to relax. I think the team is disappointed. Even Chuck Fletcher is disappointed. I don't think that anybody's going, oh, they're losers, but I think everybody knows they could have done more. That's it. This team should be playing Tampa Bay right now, taking it to Tampa Bay. That's what we all expected. To lose in the Eastern Conference Finals, the very least, not to lose on the way there. And I think that's probably why people were mad. But it's the beginning of something great. Like, that's what I believe. We have the same team. They're capable of doing more, so we should get them ready for next playoffs where they can do more.
I don't know what it is, but the Islanders just had the Flyers number, and that was the one team that's feared me. There were 2 teams that feared me in the East. Boston Bruins, because I didn't think we'd match up well with them. Physicality-wise, and the New York Islanders. I wasn't necessarily nervous about Tampa Bay at all. I think the Flyers could hang with Tampa. They typically it's very high scoring affairs for both sides, against, with the Flyers and Tampa. For whatever reason, it's like 5-4, 6-5, 7-5, something like that, 7-6. So both teams don't have trouble scoring, even when they get ahead. It could be 4-0. Remember that one time Flyers came back and won the game like 5-4 or something. It was something crazy. They were losing 4-0 or 5-0. You remember that a few years ago? And then the Flyers stormed back and they won. It was the same thing like they did to Columbus too. They did that to Columbus one year, a few years ago too. But for whatever reason, the Flyers in Tampa have a high scoring affair, and I think Carter Hart would have helped in the end there, outlast Tampa. I really do believe that the Flyers could have beaten Tampa Bay for sure. I think they ran into a buzzsaw to the New York Islanders. But in the same token, it was a very successful season. Why? In my eyes, how many analysts' hands had the Flyers making the playoffs? Only 2 here, right? You and me, right? That's pretty much it, right?
I don't know if anybody else did, but we definitely did.
There weren't many, that's for sure. I know Dan Silver did. Dan Silver, I'll give him credit. He definitely did for sure. But I'll tell you this. There weren't many others, not even in the city of Philadelphia, that gave them, even Flyers fans. Some Flyers fans did not even think the Flyers would sniff the playoffs. As a matter of fact, some Flyers fans actually said that the Rangers and Devils would be better than the Philadelphia Flyers and that they wouldn't make the playoffs, nor would they even have a shot at winning the division. Remember?
I very much remember that.
How is this not a successful season when before this season, the Flyers weren't supposed to make the playoffs, regardless of the pause? Irregardless of the pause. What, now all of a sudden we're fans because it's January and the Flyers are kicking some butt? Now everybody wants to turn it on and say, oh, yeah, the Flyers, and all these analysts come out. Oh, yeah, the Flyers, yeah, they're going to make some noise. No, not before the season began. No. Before the season began, they had the Philadelphia Flyers as one of the worst teams in the Eastern Conference before the season began. Because according to them, there were a lot of question marks in terms of Carter Hart. There were a lot of question marks in terms of Claude Giroux, Sean Couturier, Jake Voracek, right? All those three, for whatever reason, those 3 names keep coming up. You know what I mean? It wasn't a concern of no one. It was not many people even mentioned Ivan Provorov, coming off sort of a down year, which a down year to him, yes. A down year in general, no. I mean, to most defensemen, they would be happy with the numbers that he put up the prior year. You know what I mean? So, a down year to him, yes. But a down year in general, I don't think it was that down of a year, in my opinion anyway. And where would the other scoring come from? A lot of people didn't think that Kevin Hayes would be the player that he did, but he was. Now, is he a 2C? No, I think he's filling in a 2C role right now. I think ideally the Flyers would like him as a 3C, but unfortunately because of need, they have him in a 2C role right now. You know what I mean? But I think ultimately the Flyers would like to move him into a 3C role, in my opinion anyway. At least that's what he signed for, was a 3C role, not a 2C role, in my opinion. He was placed there based off of need, which is understandable, and he did the job well. He filled in the void there. So the Flyers, in my eyes, overexceeded expectations. You look at Joel Farabee and the progress he made. Did he get pushed around a bit in the playoffs? Yes. Will he get pushed around next year? No. Why? Because he's going to bulk up a little bit. There's not much time to do such, but you're talking about Joel Farabee here. You're talking about a guy that has work ethic out of the yin-yang. You're talking about a guy that really strives on his body. Same thing with Morgan Frost. You know what I mean? These two are like Joel Farabee in particular. I'll just stick with Joel. Is one of the hardest workers on his team. He doesn't stop working. I bet you right now he's skating and eating properly and eating to gain weight. I guarantee it. He's already thinking about next season. Knowing him, I guarantee he's thinking about it. So they overexceeded expectations in my eyes. You got people went down with injuries. Players went down with injuries. Bunneman filled in, comfortably. NAK filled in admirably. NAK wasn't with the team until, December, January there. Even David Kasha came in and filled in some very valuable minutes for the Flyers at times. You got Carson Sherwinski even came in at times and gave him some valuable minutes. Mark Friedman came in and gave him some valuable minutes, at times and stuff. Zamula played in the bubble, and stuff. Gave him valuable minutes there, gaining some NHL experience, and stuff. These are some things that I think they overexceeded expectations for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree that I think they didn't exceed our expectations personally, but I think they exceeded the league's expectations. And, obviously Coots got the Selke this year. AV got, second in the voting for Coach of the Year. And I like I said, to me, it's all a work in progress. So I just see it as like, hey, we're getting closer. Before we couldn't even get in the second round. Now we're upset we didn't win the Stanley Cup. That is a sign of a contender. We're in that zone now. So officially,
they're definitely a contender. Why wouldn't they be a contender? You got Carter Hart. Okay, no, for real, on the real, right? You have Carter Hart. That's, to me, one of the best defensemen in the NHL in Ivan Provorov. Why wouldn't I think of anything but goodness about this team going into next year? You have a guy in Jake that produces 60-plus points every year. He's producing. Right? You don't have to worry about him. Coots is going to come back pissed off. G is going to come back pissed off. And, the dad thing is off now, going into next season, JVR, and stuff like that. So that'll help, And, let's see what happens. I mean, they may re-sign, Tyler Pitlick, may not. I think that, given the money, I'm not sure. It depends on the amount of money that he's seeking, so he may be here, he may not. But if he is not, you got Linus Sandin, you have Tanner Lazinski, you have possibly Wade Allison if he can stay healthy. You have guys, Carson Sorwinski, Connor Bunneman. These guys, these prospects are ready. They are ready when their number is called upon. So let's see what happens. I may disagree about the defensive, at the defensive position. I think it's more short than what is being led to believe. But in my opinion, I believe highly in these prospects. I believe highly in Mark Friedman. I'm a very big Mark Friedman fan. I think he can fill a role there, admirably. And I don't think it's as big of an issue as it's maybe made out to be. But you did bring up a good point in terms of the trade. Would you trade for a veteran defenseman? JVR possibly. But one last thing I wanted to say was, he touched on Nolan Patrick, and he said that Nolan Patrick was golfing. He's getting his life back, and he's skating, and that he's pretty much doing well. And Chuck Fletcher did say that he did expect Nolan Patrick, to return at some point in 2020-21. Now, the key words are, in 2020-21, not for 2020-21, in which that he would definitely be there for Game 1. Now, don't fly off the rails, Flyer fans. There's a lot of unknowns, and Chuck Fletcher hinted on that. He said that he doesn't know about contact because he hasn't been cleared for contact yet and whatnot. So that does not mean that he is not ready for Game 1 or will not be ready for Game 1. It's just they don't know until he comes back to Philly, gets properly screened by the medical staff, sees multiple doctors, and gets cleared by his doctor and other doctors. There's probably 3 or 4 doctors that are working with him right now. So he has to get cleared by all them in terms of contact. So he could be ready for contact in Game 1. It's just uncertain now. So that's what I say. And about
Chuck Fletcher, well, he's not going to take any chances.
No, he did well.
Every time he tells somebody a date or something, it's like they just freak out. So it's like everybody was expecting this stuff to happen. In my opinion, the relationship that people have with the media today, I would expect less information going forward, not more. And get used to it. It's because of the way we respond to it. If he tells us Nolan Patrick's coming back and he's not there in the first week, everybody's going to freak out and message Nolan on his Instagram and be like, oh my God, where are you? What happened? Are you dead? It's like, it's just the world we live in today. So I think they're not that interested in feeding into our, you know what I mean? In our internet hive mind brains that just.
I was very happy with Chuck Fletcher and the way he handled today. There was few sticking points that, I may disagree with, and that's fine. But, at the end of the day, I think overall he did a good job in terms of his layout, in terms of answering the questions. straightforward in terms of Nolan Patrick. He pretty much gave the media a blueprint of this year's offseason and what's going to transpire. On top of, again, to recap, on top is to re-sign Brian Elliott, find a veteran defenseman for defenseman depth, and, shore up the bottom six. Now, he did say that in a perfect world, he would love to add, a goal scorer, but he may not be able to do that. The only way to do that would be via trade, not through free agency. So Don't expect any major splashes, Flyers fans. Actually, I wouldn't foresee the Flyers picking up any player in free agency, as a matter of fact. I think that this offseason is going to be similar to last offseason, to where Chuck Fletcher gets ahead, maybe trades for some rights. And what I say for is a good person to pick up, and I think that's one on his radar. Why not trade for the rights of Josh Anderson to the Columbus Blue Jackets, to shore up power play? Because Chuck Fletcher also mentioned the power play needing help and that it would need attention moving forward in some way, shape, or form. So Josh Anderson is a restricted free agent to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Heck, he may be able to pull off a Kevin Hayes. Hey, I'll trade you a third-round pick or a second-round pick or something. Let me get Josh Anderson. Not saying it would happen. I'm just saying that, fortunately, due to the Flyers pipeline, due to the prospects that are ready to play and that are near NHL ready, Chuck Fletcher is now afforded to trade some draft picks. Now, is it ideal to do this? I believe with building within the draft, but if you have to at the flat cap rate, I'm fine with that. Because if you're going to improve the team, I'm fine with trading a pick to improve the team and not wait 3 or 4 years for this pick, to pan out. You know what I mean? There are diamonds in the rough in the draft. This is what good teams do all the time. You look at the Pittsburgh Penguins; they seem to pick up third, fourth rounders, fifth rounders like it's candy, and they have a really good. I'm serious, but they plugged in a lot of players this year, and they performed over their expectations. It's kind of weird how that happened.
Yeah, but, that always happens to them.
No, that's what I mean. So that's what I mean. Chuck Fletcher can nail the third, fourth, and fifth rounds. He could afford to trade a second-round pick, trade a fourth-round pick, because they don't have a third this year. So, but these are some things to look forward to for the future. But no, I would not foresee the Flyers acquiring. They may get one player via free agency. That'd be about it, and it's going to be a small player. It would not be anything to write home about. Look, last offseason they traded Justin Braun, right? Traded for Justin Braun, traded for Niskanen, got rid of some dead weight that way, right? And they also traded for Kevin Hayes, technically, because he traded, a pick, for the rights to Kevin Hayes to negotiate, a contract, with him. So I think if the Flyers find out that Josh Anderson indeed wants out of Columbus, I think he could be a player to look out for. Another player that's on my radar is Kyle Connor. I like him a lot. I think he plays a great two-way game, and I think he would fit Navy's system very well.
Are you talking about from Winnipeg?
Yeah.
Why do people think he's available? That's what I don't understand. I don't think he would be available at all.
I just think a lot of players there seem to be unhappy in Winnipeg. There's one player that comes to my mind, that I would make a run at and see is Dustin Byfuglien. People call me crazy, but he would provide a spark, and that would be the defensive guy.
He would be perfect.
That Chuck Fletcher would like,
He
right?
would be perfect, but if it's possible, I would definitely look into it.
Not a banger like that, but a banger that bangs people against the boards and stuff. I just want to clarify my, words, and stuff like that. But I mean, he's
gotta be careful nowadays, Jamie.
Yeah, well, that's why I don't mean anything, but
sorry,
anyway, but I just wanted to clarify that. But Dustin Byfuglien would fit. That's if he wants to play the game of hockey. I mean, that could be one player that's on Chuck Fletcher's, radar that not many teams. I won't say that because if I'm thinking it, of course the GM's thinking it, right. So, I would make contact with him. I mean, what's it hurt to pick up a call? Chuck Fletcher said that he wasn't going to make any calls this week. He was going to wait until next week in terms of being busy, in terms of trying to field offers for trades, in terms of trying to get this offseason, ramped up here. I guess on his honeydew list, I think number one is to re-sign, NAK, Myers, and Haig. He said Patrick was going to be a little more difficult, in terms of getting in touch with his agent, and stuff like that. So he's going to be a little more difficult to nail down because you don't know where Nolan Patrick sits. Right now there's a lot of uncertainty in terms of that, what he wants and, and stuff. So why not nail down Myers, Haig and NAK?
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think they'll probably try to get a deal done as soon as possible. And I think he kind of revealed that, but it's too early. I mean, it's going to happen faster than we anticipate, but I do expect the Flyers to make their moves early. I do see a lot of that. I think it's smart to say that maybe they do another Kevin Hayes type of thing. Yep. I think they'll try to shore up their roster as soon as possible, and they're not going to make humongous changes. They're gonna bank on this team, the team that built up enough momentum to look like the best team in the league, see if they can get back to that point. They have a bunch of young talent that needs to develop. Like you said, we don't want to block people. We have young players that some of us haven't even gotten to see yet. So there's a lot of promise.
I just don't want Flyers fans to think that, okay, we could trade Ghost for $4.5 million and shed his salary when it's virtually going to be impossible with being a flat cap. Now, if the cap went up,
Ghost, I don't think that was good. I think Ghost is an easy trade, to be honest. I think the only reason we haven't moved him because we wanted more for him.
Player in trade that a team would want to be willing to get rid of 4.5 of salary is what I'm saying.
No, I think a team would be happy to take on his $4.5 million. I think he is easily worth that money. I think most teams need a defenseman of his caliber. Most teams don't even have top four defensemen. I think the only reason he's being benched is because we have a luxury. We have, honestly, too many offensive defensemen that we needed more physicality and size. And quite frankly, that's why he lost his spot, because Provorov took it from him. And there are other teams that don't have high caliber offensive defensemen like we do. So that's where I see it. I'm like, in my mind, I think a team wants him. There are teams out there that want Ghost today, that want his skills. They will trade to get him. They will eat his salary. They'll be happy to pay his salary. JVR is the more complicated one because he's not worth $7 million. He's worth like $5 million.
Yeah, I just don't want Flyer fans, in terms of like thinking, okay, we could.
I think Ghost is going to move at the draft.
I don't want Flyer fans thinking, okay, yeah, JVR, we'll get rid of his $7 million salary. No, you're getting
He's a lot harder. He's a lot harder.
Getting a player that needs a change of scenery itself, who has a high-end contract as well.
The one thing you got to remember, though, is they know what JVR is at this point. He is what he is. So it's not like a GM would be like, oh, yeah, he's definitely not worth that.
I will say, JVR before the pause was a pretty darn good player.
That's what I'm saying. He is what he is.
He was on pace to nail at least 25 goals this year, which is what you want for a player like JVR. You want 25 to 30 goals per year. He was on pace before that, before his injury. And when he came back, from the pause, a lot of players didn't come back up to form. From the pause, a lot of players, on the Fire in particular, Derek Grant is one of them.
Veterans. Most of the veterans played the worst.
That's what I mean. That's what I'm saying. Derek Grant was one that I expected to have a really good, playoffs, and he didn't. Another player that you can make, a case for that needed to improve was, even himself, Claude Giroux at times was, not a very good player. Just, he was there, but he was streaky. He wasn't consistent like he normally is, and stuff like that. I'm just being honest. Another player that underperformed a bit, on the goal, on the scoring production side was Travis Connecty. He played well, defensively, blocking shots and sacrificing his body and, trying to, intercept passes and stuff. He did well, but, there are players that, they relied upon. Sean Couturier was another. These are just some players that, not saying because Coots had like 9 points, Hayes had 9 or 10 points. G ended up with like 8 or 9 points or something like that, for the playoffs. In the 13 games that they played for the New York Islanders and the Montreal Canadiens and stuff, not to include like the, round robin, but they expected more. We expected more, from them, and it didn't happen. And I think they know that it didn't happen, and I think they are pissed off. So I think next season, where I'm getting at, sorry on the rant, but where I'm getting at is JVR was playing, decent hockey, good hockey, before he got hurt. Coming back from the pause, not so much. But he did develop a two-way game with AV, and he may have not have been as fast as he was before his injury. But I don't know. Let's see what happens next year. I think his contract stays here. I don't foresee JVR being traded by any means. But we'll see.
We'll see what happens. All right, Jamie, let's call it on that one. All right, thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll be back with more content. We'll be back next week with another episode. There's plenty to look forward to. No doubt about that. And even though things might not happen this off season the way everybody wants it, this is still a very good team. So everybody just relax. Things are happening as they should. We should just let them happen. All right, Jamie, thanks.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Love you all. And, like Urif was saying, there's going to be a lot more content, a lot more podcasts. We're going to try doing this every week. It's been my fault that I haven't been here for the past few weeks. I've been going through a lot in terms of my mom and the kids and stuff, but it is what it is, and hoping to be reliable from here on out.
Well, that's life, Jamie. It's always up and down, man. Up and down. All right, thank you, everybody. We love you, and remember to always stay gritty.
Bye.